I am so excited to bring back to our community today Eliza Kingsford, a licensed psychotherapist, mind body practitioner, behavior change specialist. She's been featured on Dr. Phil, Dr. Oz, NBC Health, CNN Health, Health Magazine, Shape Magazine, so many more. And we get her today. And I need you to know that she is turning the diet industry on its head by combining the science of nutrition with psychology of eating. And thank you, Eliza. We need this so much to create lasting results. There's that sustainable that we always talk about for our clients through group coaching, online courses, and one-to-one immersive programs. So welcome back, Eliza.
Thank you. It's so good to be with you. We have fun together, which is what I like best.
I agree. And we'll tell our listeners, but if they missed you previously, we had episode 101 together back in 2020.
That's crazy. I can't believe it was that long ago. It just doesn't feel like that at all.
I totally agree. It's kind of blowing my mind. And you had
And
written
kudos
your
to
book.
you. You've been, doing all these episodes since. You're a true podcaster,
I am in it
right?
to win it, baby.
Amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But I was going to point out your book was 2017. Like
Yeah,
your journey
I
keeps
know.
going. And I'm just so excited to be part of it and get to pop in
Thank
every
you.
once in a while. Yes. And keep introducing you to my community because I really feel like, and I'm not just telling you this, I feel this way. You have the information, the insight, the research that is this next level thinking of how we can help our clients get real sustainable results. And that's what we're going to bring to the community today. You and I had kind of joked about it in our first episode that it was a 1.0. It was a baseline of understanding and that we'll come back for a 2.0. So welcome back to 2.0 today.
Thank you. Yeah, it took us a hot minute, but here we are.
Okay, so I'm going to lead with this question for you because I think it will just open up so much of our talk together. But you have on your website, are you ready to finally have a peaceful,
Mm,
easy relationship with food without having to give up your weight loss goals? And just so listeners can click into
yeah.
this really fast, that a lot of individuals feel like if I settle into loving my body and I'm at all this peace, then I've also given up on all these other goals. So if
Yeah.
you can use your beautiful, wise words to explain this, I would really appreciate it.
Having been in this particular industry for, oh gosh, 20 some years now, I've seen the progression of almost this dichotomy where you're sort of forced into picking one or the other, and that I would say comes from both sides oftentimes, but it creates this dichotomy where it's either I have this weight loss goal and I have to do I'm sold that I have to do these things in order to get there. And historically that has felt difficult and restrictive and not good. And there's a lot of stress and strain and struggle and a lot of emotionality attached to that. But the flip side of that, we have been sold that in order to love our body and accept ourselves for who we are, we have to give up the idea of the weight loss goal, right? So that creates a dichotomy. Either you can struggle with the weight loss goal or you can love your body and be happy. And quite literally, my entire career has been based around kind of dismantling that idea and teaching people how to be in the middle of that concept because it's not easy, but it is absolutely possible. And I think one of the struggles I've had throughout my career is, I kind of get flack from both sides. And certainly the flack I get from the side who wants us to give up the weight loss goal is that they'll give a lot of evidence or research for why intentional weight loss is just not possible, or the whole statistics 95% of diets fail and all that stuff. And they'll use that as a way to say, we're harming people if we allow them to believe that you can actually peacefully lose weight and keep it off. And to that, I say, listen, I'm not saying it's easy, but if we do understand the mechanisms for why we eat, how we eat, and how weight loss works, and combining that with the psychology, it's absolutely possible to have a more peaceful and easy and what I call aligned relationship with food, and consistently do the things that usually lead to a different body size consistently. And that's the whole thing, is sustainably over time is what we're looking for. So now that it's not complex, but it is absolutely possible is what I want to put out there.
No, and so beautifully stated. And I actually have an example that just came up with a client recently where this is like huge success, where it used to be all about the scale. It used to be about the pounds, and has gone through, and it's a journey. You and I always say that, but
Mm-hmm.
it's an individualized journey, but has gotten to this point where the scales almost become so much of a side item that she got super excited that her jeans were fitting and that the nighttime eating had slowed down and stopped.
Yeah.
And then she had just recently had a doctor's visit where she looked at a scale for the first time. She's like, well, I have lost weight. I've lost
Yeah.
over 15 pounds, and it was like, but
Yeah.
to see that our brain can shift that much to
Mm-hmm.
where it used to be so important that she almost kind of forgot to look at the scale
Yeah.
was really a cool visual
Yeah.
for me to be like, we can change.
Mm-hmm.
There's hope,
It
right?
does. It happens a lot. The same, similar to what you're describing, the emails that I get when people have reached that place is all the things, all the happy things, all how they're feeling, all the wins and life is going great. Oh, and by the way, also I have lost X weight, or also it becomes this sort of afterthought that is just a result of taking better care of themselves, right? However, I think the narrative that you have to give up the desire to lose weight. You know this, we've talked about this. When people say they want to lose weight, what they're really saying is, I want to feel better. Like, it's something about the way I feel in my body right now is not feeling good. So telling people that they have to give up the desire to lose weight oftentimes creates a different kind of friction. And so I think the work that you do and the work that I do is all about hands off. You can have that desire if you want, you can give it up if you want, because at the end of the day, that's not what it's really about anyways. And that's where we start in the sort of, meet to the middle, right?
No, exactly. And I don't know if you do this as well, but like sometimes I need to remind them, like, I promise I'm still fighting for your weight loss goal, even
Right.
though we're
Yeah.
rarely talking about it.
Yeah.
Like we're on the same page. But
Yeah.
yes. So I want to take our listeners on this journey today because we hear people say, I've tried everything and it just doesn't work. Like
Yep.
maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the like one lost cause that I'm just never going to see results. And I love, you're probably the first person that I've ever seen really be able to go, okay, hang on. If you feel like you're that person and that nothing works and nothing will ever work, then I have 6 titles for you of maybe some reasons why it's not working for you. I'm going to name them. And I know that this is just one podcast and maybe this is something that we need to keep talking through because this is probably like a
Yeah.
whole book in itself. But if we could just touch base on each one of these topics to kind of see if a listener's brain would go, oh, that makes sense to me. So
Yeah.
we have habitual patterns, emotion regulation, nervous system response, beliefs and paradigms, rewiring neural pathways, and then creating sustainable solutions. So I'm sure people are like, but I didn't hear a word you just said. So I'm going to let you throw the mic back your direction and start with that habitual patterns. What does that even mean?
That will ultimately be the next book, is what all of those things mean, and why all of those things actually get in the way of us being able to sort of make permanent change. So habitual patterns. The pause is to make sure that I don't go down the rabbit hole that will take 6 hours and make it simple, because these are complex concepts and they do take some foundational understanding of what's happening in the brain body connection, which is this really, you know what a nerd I am. I am a self-proclaimed science nerd. I love all the science, and I love understanding it in such a way that you can feed it back and help people understand it simply. So, to put it simply, our brain and body has one job, not only one job, but an important job, which is to keep us alive. That's piece number 1. One of the ways that it does that is by being efficient with its strategies. That's point number 2. One of the most efficient things that the brain and body can do is to learn habitual ways of thinking and being, because to the brain and body, everything that we've done in the past has led us to our heart beating and our blood pumping and us being alive. So, well, that must be good for us. That's as objective as the brain and body is, which is if your heart's beating and your blood's pumping, whatever you've done is keeping you alive. So let's just keep doing that. Right. However, that includes things that subjectively to us maybe don't feel good or arguably maybe aren't good for us. Now, this is everything from thought patterns to behavior patterns to, all of these things that you can be aware of and go, you know what, that's maybe not so good for me, but keep doing it. To your brain, we'll stick with the brain for now, brain and body, but we'll stick with the brain for now. To your brain, habituation is the path of least resistance, which means it's the most effective. It's the easiest thing to fall back on if your nervous system is dysregulated. Different topic. Okay. So if there's other things going on in your life, for example, holiday season, a lot of different things we're thinking about, stress or whatever. If there's other things going in your life, the easiest thing for your brain to do is to fall back on patterns and habits that it knows, right? So there's a lot of reasons why habituation is an unconscious neural pathway that's kind of driving the ship. And the reason why I explain a little bit of the construct of it is because I want people to understand it's not your fault. This is the way that the brain and body is designed to work most effectively. And in most areas of your life, it's really helpful. For example, you don't have to think about breathing. You don't have to think about your blood going through and getting to all the places that it needs to go. You don't have to think about all the things that you do unconsciously. That's good for us. That conserves energy. That helps keep us alive. In a lot of places, we're happy that that happens. The places that we're not so happy that it happens are when it creates habits or thought patterns that don't feel very good to us, right? Then we go, maybe I don't like this habitual patterns and it's not serving me. And so that's again, an oversimplification of what's happening with habituation. And if we don't address it, we can't outsmart it. We can't outsmart it. It's a unconscious patterning in the brain and body. So we have to work with it. We have to learn how to address it. And first by recognizing that it's even there.
Right. Yes, the insight building of that. And by the way, you're doing a beautiful job. We've given you quite the work today to simplify like you're doing.
Yeah.
And I'm going to just keep adding as I get to listen to what that would look like to the person going, okay, I think I understand what you're talking about. It could be your negative self-talk that's just built in. And you're like, why can I not combat this? But you have to acknowledge that you have it, right?
Exactly.
It can be the emotional eating things that are tied, like a stress response, a tired response that we naturally head towards food instead of solving the problem of the emotion. So just to trigger some listeners going, oh, okay. Yeah. That's what that habitual pattern is that we naturally come to, again, something that maybe served us and is no longer serving us, or it's never served us and we just haven't highlighted it to address it yet.
Yeah. And exactly. And to that point, what we know from a nervous system perspective and a neuroplasticity perspective, and this is sometimes far reaching for people, but all patterns served us or they wouldn't have become patterns. Now that part's sometimes hard to swallow because people will say this pattern of overeating, whatever, sugar all the time, that doesn't serve me. That's not a pattern that's helpful. Or they'll take it to somewhere else. And, this pattern of me fighting with my partner or yelling at my kids, that's not serving me. Why would that become a pattern? Well, to the completely objective, not subjective brain and body, it served something or it wouldn't have become a pattern. And I think that's so powerfully important because it allows us to look at whatever it is that we're doing from a different perspective. If you believed that was true, that whatever your pattern is, so to your point, if some of your listeners are listening thinking, well, in fact, I got a note this morning on my series saying this time of year, I go to Starbucks and all of the seasonal flavors are there, right? And I just can't seem to not get the seasonal flavors. And this has become a pattern, right? And why do I do that? Even though this Frappuccino or whatever it is, arguably doesn't make me feel good later. That has become a pattern. Or another gal wrote and said, I go and have one cookie, and then my brain the rest of the night says, have another one, have another one, have another one, right? And want help breaking those patterns. And to that, I say, those patterns were serving something for you at some point, or they wouldn't have become patterns. That's how neural wiring works, is that it wires that way for a reason. And that reason is always in service of our survival. So if we believe that to be true, then that allows us to go back and think, okay, why might this have been something that was a survival strategy? Or why might this have been a pattern that I created? Versus trying to muscle our way through doing it differently. And that's the mistake that most people make is, I'm not supposed to have, I'm not, quote unquote, I'm not supposed to have 4 cookies, so I'm just going to not have them. And then you spend the rest of the night thinking about the cookies and thinking about the cookies and thinking about the cookies and what's wrong with me and why can't I overcome this and all of this stuff. We try to muscle our way through these unconscious wiring behaviors, and it doesn't work. And that's why, to your original question, for people who feel like they've tried everything, what that usually means is they haven't heard yet or learned yet or understood yet the basis of how we get to who we are and how our patterns are created and how we go about changing them and why they were created to begin with. Once people understand those functionalities, they really start to open up and go and think, I could change anything that I'm, not happy with. Not easy, but I could,
It's so promising. It is so promising and hope-filling. And I think there's also individuals going, oh, that's a lot of work to do. It is work when you hear working the program, it's doing the deep dives, but it's worth it because your energy and your effort is actually building towards that sustainability part, the long-term success.
The long-term.
Yes.
And that's why I tell everybody, especially and I know a lot of the work that you do is similar, but I tell people, especially who come through my programs, I am not their first rodeo, because people aren't ready for this type of work until they're ready for this type of work. Right. And I make no qualms about it. I don't give any false pretenses. It takes work. It takes effort. It's not easy. It's just really worth it,
Yeah, there's a process to it. And this is what I loved, because you have coursework that your individuals can do, which would I love that we can have courses that kind of lay the groundwork that by the time they get to you, the one-on-ones, their brain's in a different spot already. And that you offer all those different selections, but I can kind of see people using your coursework to set them up. They could start with your book and then they could move into your course and they could get to you and their brain's ready to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. Because you have to you have to dissect each of those pieces. You laid out those pieces and we talked about habitual habits. Well, habitual habits are tied to emotion regulation, which is tied to nervous system, which is tied to neuroplasticity, which is tied to, so they all tie together. So there has to be this foundation of knowledge and understanding of the pieces so that then we can put the pieces together and put them to work for us. But the way I describe it is, my passion is teaching a man to fish, right? My passion is sort of, listen, if you understand the way that this works in the change model, then you can apply it to anything you want in your life. And that feels really empowering for people.
Yes, that you're handing them the tools to be successful now and later. And it's beautiful. And I picture people coming to, whenever I come to a podcast and I like what I hear, I have to go back and re-listen and write it out. And then I have to try to explain it to somebody else for it to all really sink in. And I'm encouraging our listeners to do that same thing, because I could picture them rewinding just back through habitual patterns and hearing what you're saying and how it relates to them and their circumstances.
Yeah.
And now, as we're about to talk through emotion regulation, I'm going to say the same thing. Like, we can even give some time frames in our show notes of coming to these topics so you can really like hit the rewind button and break it down on your own. So, like you said, they're all connected. Let's talk emotion regulations for a second.
Yeah. Emotion regulation is also a big topic, so I will do my best to keep it simple. So, all of us, no exceptions, have learned tools and skills. I use the term skills loosely because some of us serve them, some skills serve us better than others, but we have all learned, starting from quite literally the day that we're born. We start learning from our environment how to, I'm going to use the term be safe in our environment, but I use that term from a safety from a physiology perspective, meaning body interpreting the environment as safety. I don't mean safety as in what we cognitively know as acute danger or, we're about to be hit by a bus. I mean, the environment that we're in, and the people that we're with, does it feel safe to the physiology? So I just want to set that up as the word safety. So we start learning what feels safe, and to oversimplify it, what feels good and what feels bad, right? So we start learning what feels good and what feels bad from the moment we, come out of the womb. And as we learn what feels good and what feels bad, again, unconsciously, we start to learn skills or tools or what we call coping strategies to deal with what feels good or what feels bad. And the reason I'm speaking in these terms is because that starts happening very, very early out of our conscious awareness, because, when you come out of the womb, you don't have speech, you don't have cognitive ability, you don't know how to interpret the events around you. You just figure out how to survive. And that grows as we get older. And without getting too technical about brain structures and when they develop, we do a lot of that learning about what feels good and what feels bad and how to survive in that environment in our childhood. Okay, so that's kind of the very simplified foundational setup. Along with that, we will learn what I'm calling skills for how to deal with the things that feel good and the things that feel bad. And some of those things serve us and some of those things don't, right? And I think if your listeners were able to, as you said, kind of rewind and pause, they could take a moment and go, okay, what are some of the things that I learned to deal with what feels good and what feels bad in my life, right? And for a lot of our shared clients, food is often entangled in that somewhere, meaning what feels good and what feels bad, meaning celebrations feels good, food. Something that feels bad, food, right? So it's both ends of the spectrum. Does food get entangled, or at some point did food become a skill that was used when you felt good or you felt bad? Now, I'm using that example to give an example of one of many things that we learn, not on purpose, unconsciously, as part of our upbringing, to deal with the emotions that we're having, to deal with the experiences that we're having. And so when we talk about things like emotion regulation, what we're really talking about is, have the things that we've done in the past to help regulate our emotions, are they working for us now? Do they feel good now? Are they regulating our emotions? Are they making us feel good or making us feel bad? Are they making things better? Are they making things worse? Right? So this concept of emotion regulation is two things. Number one, awareness of the skills that we developed, not on purpose, but that we have currently developed to deal with things that feel good or feel bad. So the awareness piece. Number two, learning different skills or different ways of dealing with our emotions or dealing when things feel good or things feel bad, but feel more aligned to us. So better emotion regulation skills and awareness of current emotion regulation skills, if that makes sense. And
It does.
emotion, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm going to pause you for a second just because I feel like it would be helpful for everyone if you could give like a very specific example, give like a client's example of
Yeah.
of what you just stated.
The client that I'm thinking of has a history of parents would fight a lot, and one of the things that her and her sister would do is when her parents were fighting and her sister was a little bit older, they would go into the pantry and they would sit together in the pantry. And I can't remember what they were eating. I think it was animal crackers or something like that. They were, eating the animal crackers. They would sit together in the pantry, and it was like her sister was trying to create this safe emotional space while her parents were fighting. And the way that she describes it, her parents, while they were volatile, it wasn't violent, it wasn't trauma, right? Big T trauma. It was just they were fighting. And that's important to me because sometimes people will think it's only when these big major traumatic things happen we fire and wire this way. It's not, it's for all of us. It's when you're small and your parents are fighting or disagreeing and maybe their voices are raised or their tones are different. This is what I'm describing as in the body, it doesn't feel safe, not because you're actually not safe, but just it doesn't feel good, right? When you're small, it doesn't make sense to you that they might just be having a disagreement about soccer on Saturday. It just feels big. It feels, you're having a reaction to it, right? And that's important to me because, like I said, people think it's these major things and it wires in trauma. Yes, that happens. But also, the pretty benign happens to all of us. I think we could all remember a time where maybe our parents fought or something. And so, the point being, she and her sister were, in the pantry and they were eating animal crackers. Fast forward for her, when she experiences discomfort, one of the first things she goes to is food. And it's actually not animal crackers for her anymore. It's something else. And I want people to understand that neural wiring doesn't just disappear. More accurately, the body's memory of how that didn't feel good doesn't just disappear because we've grown up and we know better. That's a powerful, important piece. So for her, when the body remembers a feeling of, ooh, that doesn't feel good, that feels familiar to when her parents were fighting, she immediately goes to food. Habituation, right? So back to the habitual piece, right? Immediately, the brain and body says, oh, I know what to do when this happens. Let's do that, right? It's not conscious. She's not making that conscious decision. But by way of example, some of the things that she's tried in the past when we've tried everything, well, I'm just not going to eat. And I can only eat this many calories. And I'm going to lock the pantry and I'm going to hide the things. That's all trying to control something that is originating somewhere else in her nervous system, in her neural pathways, in her habituation, all of the things that you described, right? So you can start to see why it doesn't work for us to try and muscle it over here when the origination is over here. So that's an example of the neural wiring, the habituation that got kind of wired in. Now, so awareness, right? The first piece, awareness. So I'm aware that when I remember a feeling of not feeling very good, that I go to the food. Okay, great. Now, can we look at different coping skills and or how often our emotions are dysregulated and the cause of emotion dysregulation and all of that stuff to work with it differently to create neural wiring? And the answer is we absolutely can create neural wiring, but we don't do that by forcing and not being aware of those pathways. We do that by working with it. I don't know if that example helped.
Oh, no, it was perfect. Thank you. I feel like my brain goes to like breaking the link, that we're trying to break that and
Definitely.
that there's promise. And if we work on breaking that link, but I like that you're also stating, yes, it's that, but you're like recreating neural pathways that associate different. It's deeper, so thank you.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it does. And I think the examples, I feel like literally probably everyone in my community could relate to that example that you just gave, because we're really working hard on what am I really hungry for? Am I really hungry for sleep? Am I really hungry for, lifting my depression? Like it's all linked and associated. And you're just doing such a nice job of this is so deep in onion layers. And I'm going to tell my listeners I'm totally roping you in, Eliza, because I'm liking how deep we're getting to go with this, that we're going to turn this into a 3-part series. Because even those 2 points are a lot to like dig through right now
Yeah.
and listen to. And when we're going to take another 2 series to go ahead and cover the rest of these. But for today, I really want that habitual patterns and emotion regulation to sink in. And I want to take some additional time for you to let our listeners know what you are doing right now, like what you offer out in the world, and that everybody has access to you because you work virtually, correct?
I do. Yeah. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So just tell
Definitely.
us all about you and what you offer, please, and anything special that you have going on, knowing that the holidays are upon us.
Yes, thank you. And I will tell everyone. So to wrap it up for them, because I would love for your listeners to have something like meaty to sink their teeth into, no pun intended, but habitual patterns, they can even just become aware of, all right, what are the things that I seem to keep doing over and over and over again? But no matter what I do, I come back to this pattern. Automatically, if that's happening, it's just a little light bulb moment to go, okay, there's some connection here that might be worth exploring. So it's a good exercise for them to do. On the emotion regulation piece, the question really is, how well do I feel like I am equipped to deal with life circumstances? I know that's kind of a weird question, but
That's
when we're talking
perfect.
about emotion regulation, it really is about on the technical side, it really is about, does my nervous system have the capacity to deal with what life is throwing my way? That's kind of on the technical side.
Mhm.
What that means for them day to day is, how easily am I sort of thrown off guard, right? How easily am I able to deal with the shifting and changing circumstances of life? In other words, am I okay only if everything's going okay? As long as I can, be in control of it, everything going okay, then I'm doing all right. But if something's off or something shifts or something changes, I'm kind of on a walking on eggshells a little bit. It's at risk for falling apart if everything isn't going my way. When we're talking about emotion regulation, it really is about, how effectively do you feel like you have the resources to handle whatever is happening in your life? So just again, being aware of that, and maybe even rating themselves on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 is house of cards. It could all come down at any moment. 10 being, oh yeah, I might struggle a little bit, but I have the resources to handle it. That's what we're talking about with emotion regulation. Okay. So they can kind of sink their teeth into those 2 questions.
Yes. Yes, and
Um,
please take a deep dive. I really want our listeners to go deep, talk about it. Once you write stuff down, go talk about it with a close loved one too, because other
yeah,
people can have such great perspective on it. Or we might feel
definitely.
like we're totally emotionally regulated, where somebody
Yeah.
else might be like, maybe we should talk.
Let
So
me reflect this to you. Yeah. I agree. That's a good point. So yeah, so my hope, and you and I were talking about this before we started getting going, is I'm so passionate about what I'm calling the sort of my model of change. It has almost a hierarchy, and you have to start at these foundational levels and work your way up. And you can't start at the top. You have to work from the bottom up because of what we've been talking about today. So, bottom level is nervous system awareness and regulation. And then we move up to beliefs and identity. And then we can start talking about mindset. Then we can start talking about behaviors. And then we can talk about sustainable outcomes. But we can't skip that. We can't sort of jump the ladder. So, and I'm so passionate about especially the first foundational level of nervous system, and then moving up into neuroplasticity and brain science, because those are really the areas that keep people stuck in their patterns for good reason. That's the biggest piece for me. For good reason. Once we understand it, we really get that this is how our bodies and physiology, that's how they were designed. They're just doing what they're supposed to do. The beautiful part is we can work with that to change it. So people can start with the book, like you said, to just get uh, um, exposed to the concepts of how our thoughts interplay with the interactions, or how our thoughts interplay with the behaviors that we choose every day. In other words, how our thoughts impact our food choices, if I'm going to oversimplify it, right? And that's a good place to start. Like you said, it came out in 2017, which means, the work has evolved considerably since then. So I sometimes call that sort of a level one, just kind of introduction to some concepts. And then I do run coursework. I do run a group course, and that group course really is all of the foundational pieces, soup to nuts, all the way from the bottom of the pyramid, all the way to the top, teaching people the structure of how this works. And it is in a course format so they can go back and listen to it. And almost all of my students listen to it multiple times so they can really understand the process of how this works. I don't even work with anybody one-on-one unless they have those foundational pieces. Right? That's how important it is to me. And that's why I put it in the course, so that by the time, like you said, they come to me one-on-one, we'll really have that structural foundation, and then we can really know what to work on. So that's how important I think this material is. And I would say right now I'm running a free series, for the holidays, because I want people to get introduced to these concepts. So if people want to just know what it's about and start listening to it and go, am I interested in that or not really? The Healthy for the Holidays series is a series all about not choosing diet and exercise over the holidays, but what we can do instead to pay attention to our nervous system, to understand more about what's happening in the brain, to understand more about emotion regulation during the holiday season, all of these things. So all of those concepts that you were talking about are in this series as an introduction to the ideas.
Oh, and I think this is where everybody needs to understand this. Like she just said it's a free introduction. Like you've got podcasts, you've got this series,
Exactly.
the book that's out there. There's all these places, no excuses on diving into this type of thinking because it's accessible to you. And then we get to keep going deeper with it. But so the best place to dive into that free course, is that your website, elizakingsford.com?
Yes, absolutely. And maybe it'll be in the show notes or somewhere else, but there's a link to sign up for the free holiday series. We can make sure that it's easily accessible for them. But yes, my website is where all of that information, they can find that as well, elizakingsford.com.
No, perfect. Yeah. And then we'll blast it out too. And it will be in the show notes, and just easy clickable links, no excuses.
Yes,
again.
right.
And
that's what we like. Easy clickable things.
Yeah. So this is just part one of this next series that we're going to do together. And I hope you don't care that I just nailed you down on this, Eliza.
But, no, it'll be so good.
Okay.
It's going to be fun.
Well,
I love
it. I agreed. I'm so excited. Our promise to the listeners is nervous system response, beliefs and paradigms are around the corner. And then we'll kind of finish up with rewiring neural pathways and creating those sustainable solutions. So you'll be walked through this whole journey in this exact same way that we just demonstrated today, where you can see why and how it relates to you in your life, as well as getting just a thorough understanding, or maybe it's just an introduction for you. And that's a great first starting point too.
Exactly.
So, you're so good. I so appreciate you.
I'm excited to do it again already for two. Yeah. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad we have fun, and I'm glad to support your community as well. So
truly so kind. All right. We will see you in another week from now. Thank you.
See you soon.